It's Wednesday, September the 6th. Before I get into the fishing report, Extreme Outdoors is having a swap meet down at Branson West this Saturday from 8 to 6. And from noon till 2 o'clock, they're going to be having some local pros in there giving seminars, stuff how to fish table rock. And also, the National Youth Association's got their shootout this weekend. So I'm basically going to do my fishing report this week on some techniques that I think will help the kids catch fish. But the lake level's 913 a quarter. It's only changed a couple inches since last week. Water temperature, for the most part, still in the mid high 80s throughout the lake. So not too much has changed since last week as far as water temperature and the lake level. But for the kids this weekend, you know, fishing can be kind of tough in September, and I fished several of the events like what you guys are fishing this weekend with my grandson. And, you know, 5 fish goes a long ways. So, you know, if you just try to keep it simple, and the 3 things that I would do, I would just have, you know, basically 3 rods out. One would be a drop shot, one would be a Ned rig, and the other would be a topwater. Now, on the drop shot and Ned rig, if you've got some good electronics where you can get out on some of these long points, you know, you can see where some of the fish are, but most of them been 25 to 35 feet deep. But you don't need to have the fancy electronics to catch these fish with a drop shot and a Ned rig. You can just go to, and it's pretty much working from Indian Point up to Shell Knob up to about Ants Creek. That whole mid part of the lake seems to be fishing the same. But if you get on some of these main lake gravel points where there's a channel on one side, you can go out there at the end of the point and start, you know, probing around about 25 to 35 feet vertical fishing the drop shot. Or, especially early in the morning, you can take and fish a drop shot just like you would a Carolina rig. You know, I'll usually use a 7-foot, 6.5 to 7 foot medium action rod, spinning rod, 6 or 8 pound line, or this particular setup, if you know, if you run braid, that's fine too, but you want to run about an 8 pound leader tied onto your braid. And I just use a Gamakatsu drop shot hook, and anywhere from a 1/4 ounce to a 3/8 ounce weight. Now, if I'm fishing like a Carolina rig, dragging it on the bottom, I might go a little bit heavier weight. If I'm vertical fishing it, I usually go a 1/4 ounce if the wind's not blowing. The wind picks up, I'll go a little bit heavier so I can feel the bait. But you can just start in there, you know, set the boat about 15, 20 foot in the morning and just work, you know, set in the deeper water and throw up to the top of some of these points. And just either drag the drop shot or a Ned rig. And I always throw a 5-fish Lures Ultimate Ned jig head. They really come through the brush and the cover real well. And I would probably throw either 3/16 or a 1/4 ounce. You know, everybody and their brother makes a Senko or a stick worm, or this happens to be a Strike King Zero, but you take like a Yamamoto Senko, a big bite stick worm. And normally what I do, I just cut them in half. And I'll feed them up on there. And right before you push the worm up on there, what you want to do is put a little dab of super glue right here. And then push the bait up on there. And that'll stay up there all day for you, unless you should break off and get, you know, lose your bait. But there's a lot of different baits that you can put on a Ned rig. You know, like Z-Man. This is a Strike King little Ned craw, but Z-Man makes some neat little craws. But, you know, I've always thought that these look more like what we're trying to imitate out there. But day in and day out, just the TRD worm, which stands for turd, for little turd worm, seems to do as good a job as anything. And, you know, right now it seems like a green pumpkin, watermelon red will work. And you can even hook up some finesse worms. You know, this is a big bite that I drop shot with. Or you can take like the chompers that I drop shot with. But both of these baits, whether it be the Ned rig or the drop shot, You kind of fish it the same way. Just, you know, the whole deal is just staying in contact with bottom and fishing slow. It may not be a real glamorous way to fish, but it'll put fish in the boat. And especially as tough as you kids' tournament usually is, when the temperatures are like this, you know, if you get a limit of fish, that'll go a long way. So it'll probably get you in the top 10. Then if you get fortunate and get 5, you can, you know, go and do some other things. But a lot of it, I just key on the main lake points, you know, a lot of bluff ends. And what I mean by a bluff end is where it's a straight wall, channel usually comes up against it, and at the end of that bluff wall, it's usually flatter on one side than it is on the other, and you can set in the deeper water and throw up there to the shallow and work it back down them rock ledges. And a lot of times on that main lake, you don't, you know, especially early, the smallmouths are starting to move around some. The Ned rig will work real well where you got a rock transition where it goes from real ledgy rock to gravel. That's something you want to key on as well. Now the other bait that I would definitely have handy is some kind of a topwater bait. I like a walking bait similar to like a Czar spook. But whatever your favorite topwater bait is, whether it's a popping bait, even a smaller whopper plopper, or like a Spro Cyclone Junior, I would keep some kind of topwater bait handy in case you see some fish schooling. Something, you know, what I like about this bait is I can throw it a long ways, but you want to have it up on the deck handy. In case they come up, you can, you know, throw in where those fish are. Probably the only other thing, you know, I would throw is maybe a little swim bait, and you can throw it on the net head as well. But I think if you just stay with the 3 rods between a Ned rig, drop shot, and keep a topwater handy. As far as on the drop shot worms, I use a little bit of everything, but day in and day out, the little chompers, brown, purple, is hard to beat. It's a Strike King. It's a Morning Dawn. I think it's KVD Magic. No, KVD Magic's the color. It's called a Dream Shot, but it's Morning Dawn is the color. This is a little big bite Somali. But on the drop shot worms, I like, you know, plums and like the Morning Dawn, something with some pink colors. But your standard colors will work too, you know, green pumpkin like a Zoom Finesse worm. Any kind of small 4-inch worm will work on a drop shot. Main deal is just keep your line in the water. Most of the fish have been on bottom or pretty close to it. So, you know, if you're dragging them baits, don't be afraid, especially later in the day. Get that boat out in 30, 35 feet and just keep the bait on bottom, and you'll catch some fish. So good luck to all you kids out there this weekend. Be safe. Till next week, good luck, good fishing.